Hi everyone, this is your host Sandie Chang. Now in Color is a podcast that not only brings forgotten history to the forefront, but it also provides space to amplify otherwise marginalized voices. This means we have to confront difficult and often violent truths in our history and its effects on the present. The following episode contains discussions around state violence, disordered eating, infant loss, and Black maternal loss.
God-given, and it's also
Day. It's never been
putting the squeeze. They make money on
excessive materialism and militarism. We know full well that racism is still that hound of hell.
I felt for you because when you texted me at 10, I was like, I'm so sorry, I just woke up. But I actually had a nightmare that I missed this recording. Like, I had a nightmare because I used to get sleep paralysis.
Oh my god.
Like all the time, and I have like hallucinations and everything, and demons would come into my room. And I had a nightmare that I had sleep paralysis and I couldn't get out of sleep paralysis, and I was and I could feel that you were texting me or calling me and being like, where are you? And then like I woke up to your text. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah. But sleep paralysis is crazy. But I haven't had it in years, so that's pretty good.
I've never had sleep paralysis, but I have like almost every time I dream I have nightmares.
Oh wow.
So like yeah, sleep stuff freaks me out.
It does.
It's almost always like apocalyptic stuff where I'm either being swallowed by the earth or drowning in a tsunami or dying in a fire. It's like one of those things every single dream I ever have at night.
It's never anything positive.
Very rarely.
Yay, coffee.
God, thank you so much.
Are we recording? We're just like talking already.
Cool.
Thanks, John.
You guys are good.
This is such a cute mug.
Levels. Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
It is
I mean,
so
well,
cute.
It came from Dunkin' Donuts. But no. Yeah, I think the microphones are all good. Headphones sound all right.
Yeah, it sounds good.
I love the aesthetic of this room.
Yeah, it's so nice here. So if your podcast ever wants to trek down here, you guys can totally record here with John.
That would be cool. So she's actually in North Carolina.
Oh.
And so I'm like trying to figure out how I'm going to do it from my apartment. I'll find a way, I think. But
Yeah, you can ask John after this. I haven't bitten the bullet to like record someone long distance yet, but I probably should at some point to like expand the network. Yeah, but thank you so much for coming.
No, of course. I love your podcast. When I heard about it from Aaron, I was like, hey,
yes,
okay.
It's all connected. So you are, how did you and Aaron meet?
So through a mutual friend, me and this girl were working at like a skincare place. Mm-hmm. And then one day I went over to her apartment and he happened to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, his episode was so fun. And I'm so excited that he introduced us because I was like, yes, more people who love history. So today I'm going to introduce you now. So today I'm joined by Jesi Taylor. Welcome.
Hi.
Jesi Taylor is a writer, trauma-informed herbalist, doula, activist, and researcher living in New York City. Their work focuses on issues that lie at the intersection between cultural anthropology, feminist legal theory, and critical race theory. When they're not writing or researching, they're exploring the city, dancing, reading, or thinking about Dungeons and Dragons. I love that. And this is Now in Color, the podcast that brings those who have been erased from history back to the forefront. And I'm your host, as always, Sandie Chang. And thank you so much for being here.
Yes, of course. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited. This is such a very interesting bio, like so many things. First of all, I guess I've never heard of what a trauma-informed herbalist is. If you want to tell me a little bit about that.
Sure. So basically it's just through herbs, but from a place of helping people that are experiencing trauma or other anxiety-related issues, really work from the inside out to come up with ways to help treat what they're going through. Yeah. So it's like not just, oh, I'm surface level feeling this, what can I give you, kind of like a pill type thing. It's like, let's go deep and like see all of these different things that could possibly contributing to your sleep issues or stomach issues or this issue, and then blending herbs and doing like either skincare stuff or tinctures or other things.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. And because when you came in, you gave me a tea.
The
and a
relaxation
script.
tea, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like you really read my mind because I think I'm slowly burning out, but I also have always had sleep issues.
And it also doubles as a really nice foot bath. If you
Oh.
put like a couple tablespoons into just like a pool of hot water, it's really nice.
I'm gonna try that. How did you get into this?
Kind of accidentally. I've always been into just like herbs and plants and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started to study the plants themselves, I started to meet people that were calling themselves herbalists. And then I learned more about them and just other herbalists, and then started studying it myself.
Yeah. And have you always lived in New York City?
No,
What is your personal history?
So I was born in Michigan, in Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Lived there until I was about 8. Moved to South Florida. Lived there until I was 18, 19. And then I moved to New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're a writer now.
Yeah.
What topics do you usually write about?
So for like freelance stuff for online publications, it's mostly about like Black maternal health and stuff related to birth and pregnancy, motherhood, and then politics. And outside of that, I'm also working on a young adult novel right now. And it's about this Black girl who's in an eating disorder treatment facility, and just her trying to get better before she goes away to this private school so she can study science.
Yeah, I think that's so important because I recently read an article about how eating disorder research is white-centered, well, mostly for white women.
Mm-hmm.
But, for example, in Asian American communities, there's a ton of eating disorders, and I'm sure that's the same in the Black community as well.
And no one talks about it.
Right.
Or it's joked about.
Yeah, it's joked about. And I feel like even when women do talk about their relationship to food, it's disordered.
Yeah.
And I try to nip it in the bud most of the time because I'm just like, don't say that about yourself and don't say that about food because that's what society wants us to say about
100%.
it. Yeah. How did you come to this topic for your young adult novel?
So from when I was like 11 until about 21 or 22, I was bulimic, and I was inspired to write this particular novel because at first I wanted to actually write a memoir just about my experiences, but then I was like, no, I'd rather write a book that's for like young Black girls that are experiencing things like this, because there was one particular thing someone said to me once when I was like at my worst, and they were just like, I don't understand why it's such a big deal. I mean, you're just getting a little thick. And at first I wanted to call the book Thick, but now there's like a recently released incredible collection of essays called Thick, so I was like, okay, let me not. But yeah, there just aren't enough books like that. Like, I've read so many of them, and they're all from the perspective of white, usually middle to upper class white women.
Yeah.
Who are usually dancers or something like that. And it's like, no, there are queer men, there are men of color, there are women of color, there are queer, just so many other types of people that are going through this. And if we don't normalize conversations about people that aren't just white and super thin,
right,
then it's just going to keep going because one, maybe people might not even realize, oh, I have a problem, or like, oh, maybe I'm not actually sick just because I don't look what the image of somebody with an eating disorder looks like. But it's like, no, like you can be killing yourself and not even realize it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people almost, I don't want to say glamorize, but it feels like it's glamorized that you have an eating disorder, which is so sad because I don't, like, we need to talk about the long-term effects, like, of autoimmune disorders that happen, fertility that happens. I mean, I'm not a mother yet, but like that's something I think about constantly.
It's so real.
Because I'm just like, oh my God, like I would hate for something I did when I was younger to affect me now. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that seemed to have had a big reaction because you're a new mom, right?
Yeah.
Congrats.
And that's thank you. I love it. But like it's so true.
So cute.
Like one of those things is like my teeth are like, they just could be a lot better, but because of bulimia they are not where they should be. And it's one of those things where it's like, wow, I wish I'd have realized years ago that this was going to be an effect. And like that's another thing nobody talks about, like all these other little things. Like I have messed up joints and bones because of that, and it's like, ugh, like if only I'd have not done all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, but now you're helping
Yeah.
future generations, hopefully. And I think it's so important that women of color are finally writing our own narratives.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Our own narratives. That's finally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so important. And you also write a lot about, you said, Black motherhood as well. What led you to writing about that as a freelancer? And you're also working on a book, correct?
So, I started writing about it mostly when I started doing research about just like rates of Black women that were either experiencing trauma or dying during pregnancy and childbirth, particularly in New York. And before I was pregnant, like that was part of my thesis topic for my degree. And so all the research I'd compiled, it was obviously heartbreaking. But then when I was actually pregnant and then going through all these things myself and was like, oh, wow, okay, this is actually my life. It was kind of like Twilight Zone-y too, because it was just like, wow, I was literally just doing research on this. And now this is my actual life right now. And then going through labor and just the whole thing, it was just like, wow, okay, I'm just going to write about this. And then when I started writing about it, my friends started writing about it and talking about it. And the amount of people that were just like, wow, yeah, that was me too. I just feel like writing about it and being transparent makes other people more comfortable to be like, wow, okay, it wasn't just me. We should talk about this. This has to be discussed. And then my work as a doula too, just like seeing what other pregnant people were going through. And then other people that like don't identify as women that were pregnant or going through birth trauma was just a way to be like, this is a whole thing that's just not getting talked about. And if we just focus on, oh, look how pretty your belly is, and ooh, stuff like that, it's like, no, there's more to this than just like.
Yeah, like I feel like I only recently learned what a doula was, for example, and also postpartum depression too, because that's not talked about either. There's so much stigma just around motherhood that I'm sure that if you're a Black mother, that's even worse. There is like no more conversation. It's just so bad. So I guess that really does bring us to the topic that you brought in, which I was emotionally preparing for as well, and I know you were too.
When I was going over the notes again about Korryn Gaines, the main person I wanted to talk about, when I was reading about what she went through the day that she was shot by the police, the main reason that she was so scared to open the door, and I'll explain like the whole scenario, but part of the reason she was so scared to let the police in was because several months prior she was pulled over for a traffic violation. Like she didn't have a legitimate license plate. She had like a piece of cardboard with some words on it. Really interesting thing she wrote on the cardboard. But during the traffic stop, she alleged that they used excessive force on her that resulted in the miscarriage of twins. And so when the police show up at the door, it's like, she said it out loud. She was like, look, I don't want to answer the door. The last time I dealt with you guys, I lost my kids and I was mistreated, and I ended up having like bleeding from my hands because of how you treated me. And so yeah, then she also had like a 1-year-old and I think he was 4 or 5 at the time, son that were also in the apartment. And it's just it's sad, but it's like, it's one example of so many of pregnant people or mothers that are abused or killed by police. Yeah. And it's like, how?
Yeah, I've never heard of these cases either.
Yeah, it's wild. I remember I've always wondered, like, why don't pro-lifers fight for stuff like this? Because it's like, if you're not going to, fight for the mom, it's like, there's an unborn life in there. Why aren't you rallying for these kids?
Yeah. I keep forgetting that this is a podcast, but I just rolled my eyes when you said pro-lifers. Yeah, why don't they?
Like, that's the perfect population to fight for. Or, oh my goodness, or So, like, in my thesis, I wrote about mothers and pregnant people in police custody. So it was, like, not just people that are being arrested,
And
but
what
also
was
people...
your degree in? Sorry, just to...
So I got an individualized degree that I came up with myself called Philosophy of Structural Violence.
Mm-hmm.
And then I focused on mass incarceration, particularly pregnant people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where did you go to?
Brooklyn College.
Brooklyn College.
Mm-hmm.
It's perfect. Yeah. That's so great. Sorry, I cut you off because I was curious, but keep going.
So what's interesting about not just like Korryn Gaines' case, but for so many of these people, it's minor violations that this is even happening for. Like the reason that the police showed up to her apartment to begin with. So the backstory is that she, like I said, she was driving without a license plate, a legitimate license plate. I actually pulled up the text that was on the...
And where, what state was this
This is in Maryland, in Randallstown, which
Okay.
is a suburb outside of Baltimore.
And what year?
This happened in 2016.
Oh, wow. I was not even aware of it.
So basically, she was driving around with a piece of cardboard where the license plate should be, and it read, "Any government official who compromises this pursuit of happiness and right to travel will be held criminally responsible and fined, as this is a natural right and freedom." And so that's what it said in place of a license plate on the back of her car.
That's pretty badass.
Right? So she gets pulled over, her kids are in the car, and they're like, "Get out of the car." And she's like, well, first they ask for her information, and she's like, it's my legal right to not have to give you my information. So fast forward, anyways, she's out of the car, they use force, and she ends up getting arrested. She says that she was mistreated while she was there in that jail. And then they serve her with a court date. She doesn't show up in court. So fast forward to the day that she's shot, they're serving her a warrant because of her failure to appear in court. But they also show up, which is kind of a related thing, to issue a warrant to her partner because he, months prior, Korryn had filed a suit against him alleging that he threatened to hit her with a chair, he hit her, beat her, and so she wanted to file a domestic violence suit. So they show up with warrants for both of them. At some point, her partner leaves with their 1-year-old, and she's left with her son. And at first, they kick in the door, and when they see that she has a gun aimed at them, that's when the police are... One of them, an officer, Ruby, claims he feared for his life or whatever. So then they go and get another warrant for her misconduct because of this gun. So anyways, it turns into this 6-hour standoff. And it ends with Korryn being shot multiple times. She dies in the kitchen. But they also end up actually shooting her son. He lives.
How old was it?
He was 5. I believe he was 5. He was either 4 or 5. And I remember, shortly after this happened, a video surfaced of him in the hospital bed, talking about what he'd experienced. And down the line, I do know his family ended up filing a civil suit for wrongful conduct. But eventually, they did end up getting some type of money because apparently... the first shot that was fired by cops was unlawful, they said. But anyways, other than that, that's what happened. But what was so interesting about her case was that she was actually uploading videos and streaming what was happening to social media. But the police contacted Facebook to have everything deleted. So you can still find it if you go to the Baltimore Sun. They have a whole bunch of footage and documents and pictures and stuff from that day. But her case just stood out to me so much. One, because it was her murder that led to me researching further to see, how many people are being killed by police? Is this a regular thing? Is this happening a lot? And hundreds of people every year are being killed by police.
And, not just mothers.
In general, hundreds.
In general, yeah.
Hundreds and over 600 a year.
Yeah.
Since 2010.
Wow.
And over 50% of them have some type of mental illness. The majority of them are unarmed, and it's just wild that people aren't talking about it. But
Yeah.
then so the reason I specifically focused on pregnant people and mothers was because there's just so many other topics that you have to talk about with this.
Yeah, it can fill an entire other podcast,
Exactly.
multiple episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when you were researching this specifically about Black mothers, what did you find in the history
goodness.
of all of Black motherhood being so much? I remember on the phone you were saying there's so much violence in that as well.
And just if we go back to, honestly, the slave trade, or back to slavery in the United States, just how Black women are and just have always been constantly under surveillance. They've been just treated with so much violence by law enforcement, by the state. And it just seems to not be stopping.
Yeah.
And it's not just by police, it's also the hospital system, the school system, just so many systems that are intersecting to just create this perfect recipe for ultimate vulnerability.
Yeah.
And what's another thing I found when I was researching was there are just countless pregnant people that are being killed by police.
Yeah.
Countless. So many.
I have not heard of this at all.
So many. Or in jails and prisons, people that are losing their children behind bars.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that when very few people do end up being able to bring cases against these people or jails, but when they do, most of these cases are just dismissed.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people will claim qualified immunity, where it's like, oh, I was acting as a arm of the state, so technically you can't. Yeah, and it just turns into this whole thing where nobody's getting any, as if there was even any type of justice that could be obtained, but it's just not happening. And then you have people like Charlena Lyles, Alteria Woods, Renee Davis, who are just being abused, mistreated, and either they're losing their children or they're losing their own lives, and nothing's happening.
I actually don't know who they are, so could you speak a little bit about them?
Yeah, so all the names I just listed were other people that were either pregnant or mothers that were killed by police. Like Alteria Woods, her case is wild because the SWAT team shows up at her apartment to arrest her partner, and they start shooting into their bedroom window, and her partner uses her body as a human shield.
God.
Yeah. And then Renee Davis, was an Indigenous woman, mother, suffering from mental illness, and she was actually killed on Native land by police officers. And
How's that? I'm
Yeah.
just saying that out.
I know,
How is
right?
that allowed?
And I say stuff
then,
like that too.
Yeah,
It's like, how is that allowed? But it's like,
like even on Indigenous land,
Yeah.
like how is that allowed? But then, how is anything allowed in this country?
And then it's wild because it's like in so many of these cases, it's like either they weren't the actual person that's being sought, or it's something as minor as a traffic violation.
Right.
I mean, flashback to Sandra Bland, and it's just
Right.
like, how
Yeah.
are these instances turning into deaths?
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Why are there SWAT teams of multiple police showing up to a house to serve somebody a warrant for not having a
Yeah.
license plate?
SWAT team is like, I don't know.
Like,
finding
come on.
Osama bin Laden. I don't even know.
Right,
who.
something
Someone bigger
like
than that.
Something bigger than that.
Yeah.
But no. And then it's just nothing. And then you don't hear these names. You don't hear about these stories. And they should be heard about more. And they're just not. And
Yeah.
it's like, I want to say it's shocking, but like, it's also not shocking. But
yeah. This sounds like, I always sound like a crazy person when I say it, but I do believe it. I think it's very intentional why things aren't
Yeah.
heard and why it's not in the media more.
it's very intentional.
And I think a lot of things serve as distractions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he who must not be named is a huge distraction.
Sometimes I still am just like, on the one hand, I'm like, how is this person our president? And then on the other hand, I'm like, of course this person's our president.
Right.
Like, of course. It makes sense.
Yeah.
He's literally
He's like
America.
an embodiment of all of America,
Yeah.
basically. Wow. That like hurts my stomach, this topic. but it's important to talk about it. I guess this is such a fruitless question. What can we do to raise more awareness? Because
See, it's such a complicated question, and I think about this all the time too. I mean, part of it is like I do my best to just like I'll write articles, do hashtags and tweets and like post statuses and just to like raise awareness. But I feel like one thing I've been trying to do more, and this is also with like prison abolition work, because I am a prison abolitionist, but I'm trying to like change the question where it's not like what can we do to close prisons, because if we're being realistic, in our lifetime they're not going to be abolishing prisons. Like that's just like what it is. So it's more like what can we do in our communities to prevent stuff like this from happening now. And it's really just like thinking about how can we work towards making sure things like food security and mental health help and things as simple as childcare and just things like that. How can we make sure that, I guess, the conditions of possibility for these tragedies are eliminated?
Right.
So it's small steps like that. It's like, what can you do in your own community to prevent certain things from happening?
Yeah.
And even that's hard too, because it's like, even if we rally to make sure that police wear body cams, it's like, what's really going to come from that? They could turn off the body cams.
Or
and even
edit it.
Or edit it. And even if they don't, they probably still will be fine and just be put on paid administrative leave when it comes down to it.
Right.
And it's just like such a complicated issue, but I feel like part of it really does start with conversations, just like making sure the issues are being like brought to the table and actually being talked about respectfully and seriously, and not just being pushed under the rug, because that's what's been happening and that's what works. Like, let's just make sure people aren't hearing about it, make sure they're not talking about it.
Yeah. And I even feel like most recently with Jesi Smollett, right? There's something that doesn't, he definitely lied about it. But something that doesn't sit right with me of how he's being charged with 16 felonies.
16.
And I'm just like, I don't think that doesn't match, the crime. 16 is, like I feel like police get away with killing people and they're just like, okay, just take a break from work for like a month and then come back later.
Exactly.
So it doesn't match, especially because the Chicago police force, they've been like torturing black men for
goodness, for a long time. On the Department of Justice website, there's like 100 and something page report of not just their police department. Oh my God, I've read so many police department like breakdowns, but so many. And I hate using the word unconstitutional just because of the way I feel about the Constitution.
No,
but like just so many uses of force.
Yeah.
And just wrong shit that's just documented. And so it's like you can't just look at it and be like, oh, he lied, this is wrong, how are we going to deal with it? It's like, okay, let's back up, because it's really not that simple. It's just not that simple, especially when you have, like you said, people that are actually sitting here killing people that aren't getting anything. When I found out that George Zimmerman tried to sell the gun he used.
Oh my God.
And was getting bids upwards of $100,000.
Yeah.
And now the most recent news on him was like someone found him on a dating app. And I'm just like, he's out here chilling, trying to go on dates.
Ugh.
And then we have here Jesi with 16 counts. And it's like, all right.
It just does not match. Like, I was very disappointed to find that he lied, but also, I'm pretty sure he was like having a mental breakdown with fame and everything. And I'm like, okay, that was wrong, but 16 felonies does not match that.
It doesn't match.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even know what to do
like,
about
what do
this.
we say?
Yeah. It's like I'm rendered
tricky.
speechless.
It's such a big conversation. So it's even like, where do you start? Where do you go? Where do you begin? What comes next? And it's just like, I feel like for so many people, it's really just like news headlines
We have interesting background
know.
music coming in.
It's just like interesting stories and headlines for them to tweet about. But then for people of color, for Black people, it's really like, yo, that could be me.
Yeah.
That could be us.
Yeah. How has researching Black motherhood informed you as a new mother?
I don't even know how to put it. It's just like, so I've had really severe agoraphobia since giving birth.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to the point where sometimes I can't tell, am I being paranoid right now? Is this a rational fear right now? But then sometimes it's maybe it's not I don't even know. There's just so many oh, that could be me things. There's too many examples of it could be me, or it could be my friend.
Yeah.
And it's just wild. And then part of me is just but I have to acknowledge that there are privileges that I have. There aren't bombs being dropped in my neighborhood. I'm not worried about drones striking or anything like that. I don't have to go outside and worry about an Israeli sniper blasting us or something. And that's real.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's also over 1,000 people were killed by police last year.
Yeah, that's also very real.
And I would never compare the two, but
yeah,
I guess just globally, the global police state is just a very real threat to
Right.
people, and then particularly people of color.
Yeah.
And so it's you just got to be and then you say, oh, be careful, but then it's even if you are careful,
Right. Even if you
if you're somebody's 4-year-old son who happens to get caught in crossfire because it's
because that happens. That happens in New York City
Mm-hmm.
all the time. Wasn't I don't even remember. There's so many
There's
headlines.
so many.
But I'm sure this boy in the Bronx was just chilling, and then there was a shoot off, and then and then he died.
last year.
Was it last year?
Oh, no, I was
Oh.
going to bring up another example. There was
okay.
a little girl who was in 3rd grade. I believe it was in Chicago. I'm terribly sorry if I'm wrong, but there was this girl who was doing her homework in her bedroom, and she was killed by a gunshot in her bedroom that
Yeah.
bounced off. And it's just stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some of these do have to do with gang violence, but then even then you have to take a step back and be well, why did gangs originate? And it's just this whole conversation just about, I guess, reactions to state violence. And that's really what it ultimately comes down to. It's reactions to state violence.
Yeah.
And who is safe and who is not safe.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, this is really, I don't even know what to say.
Right?
Yeah. It's really, it's a very hard topic because, even when a lot of the school shootings were happening, they happen all the time, but I get really down about it, obviously, because I think about, because I really want kids too. That's something I think about a lot. But even then, when when I put myself in those parents' shoes, I'm just I can't imagine that. And it really scares me because I'm just well, what am I going to do when I have kids? What is going to happen? So I can only imagine what you're feeling as well, of just the fear. Because I would also be, I guess, just as scared and just as worried, if not more so. But I don't know.
It's so much. It's just because it's part of it is I don't want anything to happen to my child, and then part of it is I don't want anything to happen to us, and then part of it is I don't want anything to happen to me, and then my child survive. It's so many different things.
Right.
It's so many different things. There's another story of this woman. I think we talked about it on the phone. Adolfina Villanueva. She was a Black mother in Puerto Rico, and this was a kind of an eviction notice type thing where a whole bunch of police show up at their house. They're you need to leave the premises, but they show up with guns, and basically she runs out of her house with a machete.
Oh.
And they start throwing like tear gas bombs into the house, and they're like, you need to come out, like you're getting pulled out of this place, dead or alive, is what the police say. And it's just like, I think about, God, if that was me, like would I be like Korryn? Would I be like Adolfina? Like would I arm myself? And part of me is like, yeah, like I would. But then part of me is like, oh God, but then that would give them more reason to. So it's like, I feel like the most thing I just hope, like, God, like, please don't let me get into any situation like that.
Yeah.
Like, please don't let anything like that happen to me. But then you have other stories where now people are, like, dying in the subway station from falling down the stairs.
Yeah.
And it's just like it's just like all of these things. And then that's a whole other conversation. I feel like I'm just jumping from topic to topic and not really going on a
It just
linear
sounds
path.
like there's not a lot of protection for mothers, and mothers often feel very vulnerable, and it is a very vulnerable position to be in, to be a mother, because you're caring for another being that's like, I would imagine, like your whole life.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of my friends, she's also a new mom, and she said it's like sometimes you are so sleep deprived and angry, but it's like this love and joy that you can't even describe. Like there is no words for it.
There really are no words for it.
And you just have to feel it. So I can't even imagine. And like, what are some resources that you know of that mothers can look into, or are there even resources?
So what's interesting, so I recently published an article with The Establishment that was talking about how while there are a lot of like traditional resources you can turn to, one of my favorite resources, and it's very weird, I guess, are like Facebook groups that I found.
Yes, I'm a part of a lot of Facebook groups.
Me too, just because it's like most of the traditional resources, like they're either saying come to this space, but then you go to the space and it's mostly white women. And it's like, yeah, like we do have these connections like as moms, and that's real. Like I've definitely had so many connections with mom friends of mine that are white. But like you don't always feel safe in those spaces, or you don't feel like you can really talk about all of our very unique issues that we face as moms. So like on Facebook, there are so many amazing groups that are like so specific.
Right.
That it's like, how are there other people with this exact intersection of identities that we could talk to about this stuff?
Yeah.
And then in those groups, they'll be like, this is the perfect website to go to. This is a great group that you can go to.
Yeah.
And yeah, honestly, Facebook groups have been my number one thing that I've turned to.
Yeah.
For help with things.
Yeah. I've been finding the same actually ever since the 2016 election. I've been I like kind of just like fell off the face. I was just like, I don't believe in America anymore. I was like really thinking about moving somewhere. But then I was like, like my mom was just like, you should apply for your Taiwanese citizenship and just go to Taiwan.
No, I feel that.
Because my mom growing up, she's always been like, I think there will be a day when like America will just like disappear into a hellfire and you have to be prepared. That was her way of telling me to go to Chinese school every weekend. Because I'm like, I don't want to go to Chinese school. She's like, you're going to have to need it. But yeah, I remember when the election happened, she was like, I think this is the time to apply for your citizenship to go to Taiwan now.
I remember that night when the results were rolling in. And like part of me, I mean, I wasn't a fan of Hillary either.
Same.
But I remember as the results were rolling in, I was like, whatever. I mean, we know Hillary's going to win. So it's like, I'm just going to watch whatever, blah, blah. And then I was like watching the results. And I remember there was a point where I was like, hold up. Is, what's happening? Is this? No. And then they kept coming in and I was like, huh. Okay. All right. No, but we still have a couple more states to roll in. And then I was just like, wow, okay.
This is happening.
So this is happening now.
Yeah.
And then I feel like I was already like, I feel like this, see, it goes back to that weird like privilege thing too, where like part of me is like, this country's just like always been trash. But it's also like, I don't even want to say things got worse when he was elected. Because I mean, Obama was like a trash president too. But like,
I have like a blind love for Obama, and I know it's wrong too. I'm like blindly in love with him.
Yeah, he's an interesting one.
Yeah, like
He's a really
obviously
interesting
I know
one.
he did terrible things. I'm like, Obama, save us.
When I turned 18, that was my first election.
Yeah.
And so like early on, damn, did I love that man. I like volunteered for his campaign.
I think that's why. He was also my
Yours,
first
yeah.
president, like my first one that I could vote for.
And
So I
was
think
just
that's why I was like,
oh my God.
I
And I
love
remember
him.
that song came out where it was like all these singers and they did that Yes We Can song.
Oh.
And I was just like, oh my God, this dude is so cool. And he's black. And like, what is happening? This is so cool. And then for a little while, I was like, oh my God, okay. Things are going to change now. Things are going to be so different now.
yeah.
Everything is so different. This is amazing. And I feel like for a few years I was like on that wave, but then I started like researching like how he deported more people than any other sitting president and killed so many people abroad with his drone strikes and stuff. But like, yeah, it's just this is a weird country because I feel like on the surface it's like, yeah, like I'm sitting here like with my cup of coffee
Yeah.
recording this podcast
In Brooklyn.
in Brooklyn and the sun is shining. I don't see any Israeli snipers on those roofs over there. There's like a photo shoot going on over there.
Is there? Oh.
Yeah, and it's like black women doing a photo shoot over there. Like, that's so nice.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. If I hop a turnstile, I might get shot or something. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is just weird. This is a weird place.
It is.
This is a weird place.
Yeah, like you were saying, like if we recorded this and we said all this in China, for example, we'd be never seen again.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do have to, like, just for my sanity, I do have to be like, okay, well, at least I can have this podcast and say crazy things that the government won't be like, oh, we're taking her away forever. But at the same time, yeah, like there are school shootings, there's shootings in movie theaters. Like I'm a little scared of movie theaters sometimes.
No, for real.
Because
For real.
like one crazy person who will come in during Batman.
The Stoneman Douglas shooting happened where I'm from in Florida.
Yeah, that's.
Actually, like,
Did
weird.
you go to that high school?
So, I didn't go to that high school, but their football team used my high school's field, and I did orchestra at
was
Stoneman
in
Douglas.
orchestra.
Really, violin. First violin.
Same. I was second. Always second chair, never first.
I was always second chair too,
Really?
never first. Oh my
What?
God. But yeah, I did orchestra at Stoneman Douglas, and
Yeah.
what's interesting is so news reports came out, and this is a weird connection, and I will always bring this up because it's so. A news report came out how there were 2 police officers who got, I think it was 26 phone calls about the dude who did the shooting, and they never like followed up. Wow. One of those police officers is my racist ex-stepfather, who was incredibly abusive, and I remember that news came out, and I remember seeing his name in the news article, and I was just like, holy wow. I don't know about language.
Oh, you can curse as much as you want.
But bringing it back to like the main topic, what's interesting is that one of my first ever experiences with police that I've ever had in my life was it was right when I moved to Florida, and my mom called the cops on him because he's like just a violent racist. That simple. She calls the cops on him, and the police show up. He steps outside and convinces them to leave. And they never did anything. They never followed up, never checked in. And to this day, I always think, I wonder what would have happened if they would have actually, like, taken it seriously. Like, maybe I wouldn't have ended up being an abused child, and maybe he would have never ended up being a cop one day, and maybe whoever actually ended up getting those phone calls in the future could have prevented Nicholas Cruz from doing... I don't know. It's just, like, so many intersections, and it's, like, I wonder if... Maybe if it was, I don't know, maybe if my mom was a white woman instead, would they have taken her call seriously? I don't know. But I remember when I read that news, I was like, I'm not even surprised.
Wow.
But, like, police will stick up for each other. They will...
Yeah. This strange brotherhood.
It's a strange brotherhood.
Yeah.
It's a strange brotherhood.
Ugh.
It's so
crazy.
It's so much. It's so weird. And we're supposed to just trust them.
Yeah.
And that's what gets me the most, is how many people will think there's something wrong with you when you don't trust cops.
Yeah.
And why people are just like, well, I don't get why Korryn Gaines had a gun.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's why. Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is so heavy. I like my stomach hurts. Oh, God.
Yeah.
Where can we go from here?
Where can we go from here?
How far along are you on both of your books?
Oof.
And
So the novel, I'm doing like a really heavy editing part right now because I went out on a limb and like submitted like a pitch to one of my favorite literary agencies, and they're interested in reading it.
that's great.
We'll see what happens with that.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We will see what happens.
Yeah.
We will see what happens. But so I'm editing it for them, and then the other stuff I'm working on, just real like foundational level stuff. But but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really important. And you are also starting a podcast too, specifically
Yes.
about this.
About Black motherhood and moms of color. It's called Time Out Mom,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be with me and then Oasis Bailey, who's based in North Carolina, and it's just going to be about different topics related to motherhood. Like we're going to have an episode about like sex and pleasure, one about self-care, one about I won't even give it away. Just like tons
Yeah.
of different topics, but specifically
can't
about
wait.
motherhood from the perspective of two Black moms.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I think that will be really great.
I'm
And
excited.
I mean, just for me personally, even this podcast has been really healing because, like I said, from 2016, I just like fell off the face of the earth. But I really hope that your podcast is also very healing for you too, because it is such a difficult. We can only do so much,
Yes.
and sometimes even with this, I'm just like, is this enough? Like, just it makes me angry all the time of just like hearing all these history that's been erased because to uphold white supremacy. But I think the more people of color and women of color who come up and rewrite our
Yes.
narratives, I think the better it will be.
I know-
Finally.
And I know you said, is it enough? But like, so I read this quote recently that said something like, the point isn't to have a handful of people that are being eco-friendly perfectly. The point is to have millions of people doing it imperfectly. And I feel like it's the same thing when it comes to stuff like this. Like, there's not going to be a perfect activist. There's not going to be like a perfect movement. But as long as there are enough people that are trying, like really, really seriously trying,
Right.
then I think that's what counts. Because
Yeah.
like, I mean, we're here, we're out here, we're talking, we're getting people, like, who knows who's going to listen to this
Yeah.
and is going to want to do something,
Right.
like something, even some small thing, like join their, and then I have this weird thing with government, but like join your community board,
Yeah.
attend like local meetings, email your public transportation people, like, I don't know, but like, who knows who's going to listen to something
Right.
and go out and do something about it. And I feel like that's what's so important. Like, talking about it really can help.
Yeah.
And I feel like spaces like this are also important too, because they really highlight, like, not everybody can get out there like for physical reasons. So things like podcasts and online publications and stuff, like, they're so important
Yeah.
because
And
it's
Facebook groups.
and exactly in
They're
Facebook
so
groups,
great.
it's like spaces that weren't around before that can help us get information around so much more quickly. And that's
Yeah.
another thing too. Maybe there's somebody in some small town in Nebraska or something who stumbles upon the podcast and is like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I never heard about this before. And then they'll share it with them. And it's, yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting to see the stats. Sometimes I'm like, why is someone in the Philippines listening
Right?
to this?
I
And
feel
I'm-
the same way.
Yeah.
Like,
Who's listening to this?
Who are you?
Yeah.
Thank you, but what's your story?
I want to know. Yeah, I mean, it is like that that one James Baldwin quote that I'm gonna butcher. It's like you write in order to change the world, knowing full well you can't.
Yeah.
But if you just change one person's world,
I
that's
know.
enough. And like,
It's so true, though.
I'm gonna hug you.
It's so true.
Yeah. It's so nice to also meet another writer too, because I often get lost in like the, am I even writing something worthwhile? Is this podcast worthwhile? I mean, like I was telling you when you came in, I was just like, I just did a show last night that I was like, what is my life? Basically, I was like, what is this art? Who am I doing it for? Why am I doing it? It was like one of those existential moments. But when I have a conversation like this, I'm just like, oh, this is why I'm here, and it's so nice to be reminded of that.
Agreed.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite Facebook groups? Are you allowed to name them, or is it like super private?
No, they're not super private.
I'm in like a lot of murder Facebook groups. That sounds crazy, but a lot of like true crime ones.
I'm obsessed with true crime.
Yeah, so I'm like always in these like with like a lot of women who are into true crime, and I'm like,
I didn't know so many of my friends that are women were into true crime like I am. Like really into true crime.
Yes, it's like sick. We're upset. I'm just like, what is going? I'm always reading about just the weirdest things, but it makes me more anxious. But I also feel a little bit more empowered. Like it's gonna. I
feel the same way.
Maybe detect when someone is being a weirdo. Hopefully.
No, for real.
I think it has helped me a little bit.
Because I feel like reading some of the first ever true crime book I ever read. Oh goodness, it was either called Invisible Darkness or Darkness Invisible. I don't remember, but it was about the Ken and Barbie murders that happened, where it was like this couple that were going around. I don't even want to get into details. Okay, I'll get into some details. Basically, they were just going around luring people into like having threesomes, but then they would kill them. And it's like reading some of these books, like you learn about their mannerisms, what they were doing, what tactics they would use to get people. And it's like, now whenever I'm in a space, I'm just like, who's around here? Where are the exits? What's going on? Because like you said, like the movie theater thing, you never know anymore.
You never know.
People are really popping off everywhere.
Yeah. Maybe this is kind of dark. Whatever. This is dark. It's going to be okay. When I was in drama school, there was only one exit. Like the classroom was in the back, and like the stage is in the front, and then the only exit is like beyond the stage. And I would always have these like dark, because people in drama school get a little crazy. It's just like a lot. It's a lot of emotions. And
I did musical theater.
Oh,
so I
you understand. And there were these moments where I was just like, if one of these students literally goes insane with their art or whatever is happening, and they decide to come in and shoot up this studio, I'm going to be fucked because there's no way out. And I would always think about this, especially when it was like a man who was like kind of a lot. Because, you know, they encourage you to express your anger, like really explore your anger, go there. So like whenever guys would get really angry and like the murderous rage would come out, I would be kind of scared. I'd be like, I'm really scared right now because I don't know. And like the only thing behind me is like windows on the 8th floor. So it's just like, oh, I could jump out and die that way.
I feel like that on the train sometimes. Like sometimes when people will get just real loud and stuff, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? That's why, no joke, my favorite way to travel is by bus. Because God forbid something happens, I'm getting off of that bus.
Yeah.
If I'm on the train,
no way to get out.
Hopefully you can get out.
That.
Yeah. I know. It's I told you, some of it's like, is this a rational fear? But some of it is like, I mean, it just sucks that you really do have to say you never know, because sometimes I'm just like, the fact that I'm even having this thought just shows how ridiculous I am. And then you read a news story and it's like,
I don't think it's that ridiculous.
Maybe it's not that ridiculous, actually.
Like, the other day I was asked to, it was like a whole other topic, but I was asked to speak at like a mostly straight male, like Asian American conference. About interracial dating. And I was just like, well, I don't. And I told the founder, I was like, well, I don't want to because I don't feel safe. And he didn't understand that. And I was just like, I just don't know how men will react
Yeah.
in that situation. Like, yeah, it seems like a fairly harmless topic. We're talking about dating. We're talking about interracial dating, which is already just a touchy subject.
Yeah.
And I don't know if one person in this crowd will be insane and just like
Yeah.
follow me to the subway and
No, that's
like,
real.
like fucking, I don't know, kill me. I don't know. It's like, because it's really scary because you see these like incel communities developing online, and you do see men kind of going crazy.
And I bet you've been followed before.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes.
So many times.
Exactly. You just get followed all the time. And then it's even scarier knowing that over 50% of women that are killed by their partner.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's like you hear stuff like that and it's like, okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
It's scary.
It's scary. And then like bringing it back to the whole topic, like when, like, how do you react in certain situations? I feel like one thing I think about a lot is like, if God forbid I have to talk to a police officer, I wonder, how do I talk to them? Because part of me is like, do I get all, I don't even know how to put it, like, do I let them know straight up, like, I study legal theory, like, I'm gonna make sure that you know, like, you can't talk to me like I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But then is that gonna make me seem kind of like a threat because I'm this like outspoken, loud black woman?
Yeah.
Black whatever I am.
Yeah.
Or should I act dumb? Do I act scared? Or like, how do I act around them?
Yeah.
And I don't even know. So I just hope it doesn't happen. Because
I don't know.
like the last time I did have to deal with police, had to do with, I was in a train station. And the entire time, I was just like, everything I did, I was like, I'm reaching into my purse for my ID. I'm reaching into my pocket for this. And he was really like, you know, you don't have to update me with what you're doing. And I was like, no, I do. I want you to know exactly what I'm doing every single moment that I'm doing it. And it's like, how do we
Yeah.
deal with all these situations? And then it's like the fact that there are people that don't think about this stuff. It's like, wow, you're really out here not scared? Wow, okay, good for you. Good for you, just walking around, not worried you're going to be killed or followed or raped or abducted. That must be nice.
And I'm not glad that you feel that
No,
way.
but it's nice to know
like,
you're not alone.
Not alone, because yeah, being followed is really
It sucks
the
because
other
they will dead ass just follow you
Yeah, they
home.
will.
Doing the whole, like, I'm sure you've done this before, where you'll be followed, that you'll have to take a whole other route
yes,
and pretend you live somewhere else.
Exactly.
Just so you don't have to worry about them possibly
coming to kill you.
coming.
at night.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
so many
scary.
times.
This one time, just a few weeks ago, I just asked someone, like, he was coming up from the train station, and it's like a weekend MTA. So I was like, is this train running? That was the only question. And for some reason, he was like, no, it's not. And I was like, okay. Turned around. And for some reason, he got that as like a prompt that I'm interested. So he was like following me and being like, hey, so where do you live? And I was just like, please go away. And he like followed me for a block, and I was like weaving through people, and I finally just like dipped into a cafe and pretended I was like ordering something, like a $6 kombucha. And I was like, I don't even care. I just need to like get out, like be in a public space where if something were to happen, yeah, I can't. But this is something most people don't think
That
about.
they don't
Men
think
don't
about.
think about.
And it's like, and that's regular ass people. It's just like, imagine it's a police officer with a gun.
Yeah.
And it's just like, God forbid something were to happen, you know that if you do whatever, they're going to end up looking like the person that was in the right.
Yeah.
So it's like we have all these cases where it's people that whatever they were doing, no matter what happened, if they end up dead, like they're going to find a way to make it seem like it was justified. Like what happened with Korryn.
Yeah.
Where no matter what happened, it was justified. It started with a traffic violation, boom, and that's it.
Do you know what happened to her son now? I mean, he's alive.
Yeah, he's alive now. I'm not sure like who he's living with or anything like that, but I do know he's alive, and I know his family won some type of settlement. But yeah.
Yeah. As we're closing, is there anything you want listeners to take away from this story, or anything that shifted your perspective at all when you learn more about this story?
I guess just when talking about or thinking about anything that has to do with police or the state, think about history. Think about the fact that they are necessarily going to be protected and given more rights and benefit of the doubt than you are. And when you hear stories about people that either were abused or lost their life due to excessive force, take a moment before you automatically think, well, they shouldn't have been doing X, Y, Z. Like, really think about that power dynamic and the fact that when it really comes down to it, like, there's a reason why we're not hearing about these hundreds of people that are being killed by police. I know they're supposed to serve and protect, and maybe in some cases they do, but just to be mindful that that's not always the case, and to keep that in mind, and to be careful. And it is not illegal to record police. So, I mean, if you do see something and you don't feel like your life is in danger, record, like, have as much evidence out there as what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Where can people find you if you want to be found on
sure.
social media?
On Instagram, my handle is moontwerk, which is my, like, spin on Sundance. And then my website is jesitaylor.org, Jesi, Jesi-Taylor.org. And on Twitter, Jesi V. Taylor. But I'm, like, ridiculously active on Instagram.
Yeah.
So.
I love following you on Instagram.
Oh, thank
yeah,
you.
And your
Thank
baby's
you.
so cute.
Thank you.
And when can people expect your podcast to come out?
Oof. So my co-host and I were trying to be, like, obnoxiously prepared. So probably sometime over the next couple of months, because we want to have, like, several episodes recorded before we put it out. But
That's
yeah,
great.
It's called Time Out Mom. And yeah, we're going to be having, like, some giveaways that are going to come up. And yeah.
Oh, I
really
can't
excited.
wait. And are you in the Women of Color Podcasters group on Facebook?
Oh my goodness, I should be.
Yeah, I'm going to invite you
Okay,
because
cool.
that was literally what helped me start this podcast. Like
Awesome.
it was started out as a small group of 400. Now it's like up to the thousands, and it's
Wow.
like really everyone is so helpful. Like if you have any questions at all about anything, you could just post and someone will answer you, and they won't be like you're being stupid. And
Yes.
yeah, so it's great. And thank you so much for coming onto this show.
No, of course. Sorry, I wasn't more organized. in
No,
the
this
stuff I
was a
saying.
wonderful topic, and I think it's so important to talk about. And even though it was, I think we need to have these heavy, uncomfortable discussions because even these are things I don't even know about, and it's so important. And I'm so glad you're starting a podcast too and writing books about it. I'm really excited to read both of them.
Thanks.
Yeah, and thank you again for listening to Now in Color. You guys can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and as always, it's presented by Brick by Brick Studios.
Thanks, Brick by Brick.
Thanks, Brick by Brick. All right, thank you for listening.